Boundaries. We talk about them a lot around here because of how important they are for our own mental health and well-being, for our own sanity, for our own peace, even for our own identity and sense of self. Interestingly enough, the first online course that I ever created was my Healthy Boundaries Bootcamp. Now, I still have that course. People still buy that course. It's gone through a few iterations, so there's a more updated version that I have now. But that was the first course that I ever created because I knew how important that was for building a foundation of confidence, of peace, of self-assuredness, of being able to have a better relationship with others and with ourselves. A lot of people don't really see that the root of a lot of their biggest issues, overwhelm, stress, anxiety, depression, relationship struggles, are because there are boundary problems. Because we have a problem with boundaries because we don't really know how to set them. We don't really know where our boundaries are, and we don't really know what that means. So today we are going to talk more about it. I'm going to teach you about some signs to look out for that are going to be a very clear indication that you need better boundaries. And then I'm going to give you some next steps to go from there. This is going to offer a lot of insight. This is going to help you understand more what's going on inside of you. And by the end of it, give you some insights and some action steps and a lot more peace going forward. But before that, if you're new here, welcome to our incredible little corner on the internet. Take a second, introduce yourself in the comment section below. If you're back again, it is always great to have you. Special hello to my shifters. So good to have you here. Make sure you say hello in the comments. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. The button's about right down there. And if you get something out of this talk, I could ask you to like the video. That would be amazing. Either way, my name is Julia Kristina, and I am a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a coach, and the creator of my membership community, the Shift Society, where heart-centered humans just like you are coming and taking this work to the next level and being supported and doing it in community and learning a step-by-step mind and emotional management process that will change your life. You can get more information about the Shift Society in the description below. I help heart-centered humans break through the crap that is holding them back so that they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And boundaries hold a very special place in my heart because I come from a family that was quite enmeshed, lots of codependence, lots of people-pleasing, lots of identity fusion. For me, a lot of emotional confusion, a lot of confusion around who I was and what I was allowed to want or need or think or feel. And so I remember when I was first introduced to boundaries, however long ago, I didn't even know this was a thing. And the first time I started to learn about boundaries, it was around the time I was in grad school to become a therapist, and my mind was blown. Just this idea, I mean, it sounds so simple now, but just this idea that I was allowed to have my own wants and needs and thoughts and feelings, and I was allowed to create space for them in my own life. I was allowed to say when I didn't want to do anything. Now, it was a lot easier to do with friends, although I still worried about anyone ever getting upset with me or disappointing anyone. But it was really hard for me to do with family. I didn't think I was allowed to do that within my family. And really understanding that, yes, I'm a full and complete being in this family who has just as much rights for their own wants, needs, thoughts, and feelings, and preferences, and choices of what she wants to do with her time as a full-grown adult, what she wants to do with her energy as a full-grown adult, as everyone else in the family. It blew my mind. So what are these signs? What are the first things to start looking out for? The signs that you need better boundaries, that you need to be stepping into your own life as the full expression of yourself, that you are making yourself a priority in your own life. Not the only priority. Doesn't mean that you're the only thing that matters ever and nobody else matters and you're just going to say, screw it to everyone else. It's about you and what you want and how you're feeling and what is the best for you, what's most important to you. I mean, you can do that. It's just going to make having relationships really challenging if you're only ever thinking about or considering yourself. So we're not saying that you are trying to be the only priority in your own life, but you are allowing yourself to be a priority in your own life. You are allowed to be setting limits and parameters around your own time, around your own energy, around your own preferences. You're speaking up and saying what you are available for, what you are not available for, and you're dealing with your own mind trash that comes up around that makes you feel guilty, that makes you feel selfish, that makes you feel that you're being too entitled or too difficult. Boundaries is kind of an art where we're figuring out how to be a priority in our own lives and then doing it in a way that feels good for us, but that also takes our relationships into account. There's this beautiful quote by Prentice Hemphill that I'm going to not summarize isn't the word that the word I'm looking for, but basically it says in a nutshell that boundaries are the space in between which I can love me and you simultaneously. So let's get into looking at what some of these signs are that you definitely need better boundaries. The first one, it is really obvious when I say it, but it might not have occurred to you. So the first one is that you say yes when you really mean no. How many times have you done that? How many times have you been asked something of yourself? They've been asked to help with something, to be involved with something, to lend something, to be available for something. And you've been like, I can't really do this, or I don't have the time, or I don't have the space, or I'm already feeling overwhelmed, or I just need some time to myself. But you say yes anyways because you're afraid of disappointing anyone. You're afraid of upsetting anyone. You're afraid that people might think that you are being selfish or difficult. You're afraid of making space for yourself in your own life because you're worried about what people are going to think if you do. So what are the consequences of this? If you have an overwhelm problem, then you have a boundary problem. If you have a resentment problem, then you have a boundary problem. If you have a feeling taken advantage of problem, you have a boundary problem. All of these things are a result of not having clear and healthy boundaries for yourself. Because you're overwhelmed because you keep saying yes to things that you really need to be saying no to. You don't have the time or the space or energy for them. Or you're feeling resentful because you feel like, why do people keep asking me this? Don't they know it's too much? Don't they know that's unreasonable? Don't they know I'm already stressed and overwhelmed? Well, no, they don't. Or they wouldn't ask. Or maybe they might trust that if you were feeling stressed or overwhelmed, if they asked something of you, you would just say no. Or you're feeling taken advantage of because you keep doing things or people keep asking things of you and you keep saying yes. And so you think like, why do they keep asking me? Why don't they respect that I have limits, that I can't do it all? Well, the reason they keep asking you and thinking it's okay with you is because you keep saying yes. So that is a clear sign that there is a boundary problem there. The next sign that you need better boundaries is you always feel overwhelmed. You always feel like you're rushing from one thing to the next. You're just trying to get through it all. You wake up in the morning and you're almost like going on warp speed from the time you get up from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. You're exhausted. You're stressed. You're kind of barely hanging on and just trying to get to the end of the day. You never feel like there's enough time to get everything done that you need to get done. Or maybe you're working late at night. You're working on weekends. You're never really taking time to rest, to relax, to rejuvenate, to take care of yourself because you feel this heavy burden of a never-ending to-do list that you can never quite get on top of. And if you ever do take a little space for yourself, if you ever do take any time to rest and to do something that's enjoyable or fun or caring of yourself, you get even more overwhelmed because you're like, now I have so much more to do afterwards because I took that time for myself. So then you're like, there's no point. It's just going to make things worse. You maybe go around in life with that tight feeling in your chest, like, I just am on the verge of imploding, exploding, maybe a little bit of both. But you just feel overwhelmed with everything, most, if not all of the time. If that is a case, then there is definitely a boundary problem there, because you are carrying the weight of the world. You're carrying the weight of everything on your shoulders. You're trying to do everything and be everything and stay on top of everything. And you think, oh, your boss needs this, and your partners need this, or your kids need this, or your aging parents need this, or the neighbor needs this, or this needs to get done, and that needs to get done. And you haven't put any limits. Well, that's not true. You have put some limits, because eventually you do sleep, I'm guessing. I'm guessing not many of you have been going for 24 hours straight for days, weeks, months, or years on end. So you do put a limit somewhere, and you stop at some point and you sleep. The problem is that there is a boundary there. So just to clarify, there is a boundary because you do stop at some point and sleep. The boundary is just too far out. You're doing too much and getting to that absolute limit instead of paring things back so that you have some space. So you are probably not getting everything done every day. At some point, you are claiming defeat by the to-do list, and you are giving yourself some time to sleep. But the boundary is too far out. Our next sign that your life is going to get so much better when you have better boundaries is if you find yourself often taking responsibility for other people's feelings. In other words, you start to feel stressed or upset when you get the sense that somebody else is stressed or upset, even if you haven't done anything wrong, even if you haven't done anything mean or hurtful or harmful or walked up to them and punched them in the face. They are having a feeling, and you are taking it on and thinking even that it's your job to fix it. Usually if it's someone that's close to us, we get more impacted by it. A friend, a partner, a parent, a sibling, a close coworker, maybe our boss even. If you kind of sense that your boss is not in the best mood, you think it's your fault. You feel like it's your job to fix it. If it's your partner that is just even seeming a little bit upset or withdrawn, or even just kind of neutral, they're just not overtly joyful, you automatically think it's your fault, and you automatically think that it's your job to make it better. That you wonder what you did, that you spend time stressing and wondering and worrying and replaying, and you think that you are responsible for it and that you need to fix it. Now, of course, if we have done something to hurt someone and we're pretty sure that this is the case, then we can ask them, hey, I get the sense that something I did or something I said upset you. Let's talk about it. But in the absence of that, when there's nothing clearly that has happened, but you still kind of take it on, and probably because you're either a highly sensitive person or an empath or both. We'll talk about the difference between those another day, but if something I said there connected with you, then you know exactly what I'm talking about right now, that you just sort of absorb other people's feelings. And so working on having those boundaries with yourself, to be able to say, this is where I start and this is where you end, and they are not the same things, not fusing ourselves to other people's experiences. Of course, if we have a loved one that is going through something really difficult, who is in a lot of pain, that's going to impact us. I mean, we're not sociopaths. We're not devoid of empathy. But if you find yourself often carrying the emotions of others, feeling responsible for them, feeling like it's your fault, feeling like you have to fix, you have to make everyone happy, then that is a clear sign that there's a boundary problem. The next sign is an interesting one. This might be a harder one to hear, but if you find yourself complaining about the same person a lot, then the chances are that you need better boundaries. If you find yourself complaining about your boss a lot because they micromanage you, or because they're giving you too much work, or they expect too much of you, or they don't ever let you have any time off, and they're calling you at all hours of the night, or they're emailing you things at the 11th hour, you complain about that a lot, there's a boundary problem. If you are always complaining about your sister who always wants to borrow money from you, or is always asking you to help out with her kids, and she never is available to help you out with anything, or your parents are always asking you to do them favors and they never really seem appreciative of it. They're just this expectation. You complain about that a lot. Or you are always complaining about the coworker that barges into your office and never seems to leave, and all they do is talk and talk and talk. And you are just so irritated and annoyed by them for doing this. And this is continuing on, and you're complaining about it on and on for days or weeks, months, or even years. And that is a sign, my friend, that there is a boundary problem and some boundary work needs to be done. Even some boundary setting, more simply, needs to be done. The next sign, you isolate yourself. So if you find yourself isolating yourself a lot, not going out, I'm not talking about having alone time, having time to yourself to just rest and spend time with yourself and, just have that beautiful alone time that's restful and rejuvenating, where you're just really enjoying spending time with yourself. I'm talking about isolating, avoiding, not wanting to go out and deal with anyone or anything because there's a fear there that you are going to be hurt or taken advantage of, or someone's going to ask something of you that you don't want to do, and you're going to be put in a really sticky position, and it's going to feel overwhelming or upsetting or confusing, or you're going to have to deal with feeling guilty. If you say no, you just don't want to have to deal with anyone, with any kind of anything in relationships that is going to put you in a difficult position. So you isolate yourself instead. That is a sign that there is a boundary problem because you don't feel comfortable and confident speaking up for yourself, saying what you're available for, what you're not available for, saying yes when you want to and no when you want or need to. The next sign is that you often feel small or powerless. You often feel like you're the one to back down, to give in, to concede, to let the other person have their way, to let the other person be right, to let someone else do all of the decision-making and the directing, that you are keeping yourself small in your own life. There's a boundary problem. You are not setting clear, confident, and kind. Let's talk about kind here, because we also want to be setting kind boundaries. I can't imagine that many among us want to be setting mean, hurtful, harmful boundaries. We're not trying to push people away or punish them. We're trying to establish ourselves as a priority in our own lives. We're trying to stand firm in who we are and what we are and even why we are in our lives with our partners, with our parents, with our kids, with our coworkers, with our bosses, with our neighbors. We want to be setting clear, confident, and kind boundaries. Another sign that you are struggling with boundaries and you need some better ones in there is that you often feel angry and like you want to burst, that you are this close to losing your mind. If you have an anger problem, if you struggle with anger and having angry outbursts, then there's a very good chance that you have a boundary problem. Anger is often the result of feeling powerless or helpless, trapped or stuck or overwhelmed. And as we've just talked about, these are all signs that you need better boundaries. And so maybe it is that you feel pushed around, that you feel taken advantage of, that you feel powerless, that you feel out of control, that you feel like you are being crushed by the weight of everyone or everything, and you are trying so hard just to keep it together. but you are this close. And maybe even you are beyond this close and have been losing it, have been flipping out, have been freaking out, have been screaming or yelling, but you don't like it. It doesn't feel good. It's not how you want to be showing up in your own life. It's not necessarily that in and of itself you have an anger problem. Chances are you have a boundary problem. And if you struggle with anger and everything that I've just said makes sense, you're like, oh yeah, that's what I'm really struggling with, then you know that it's a boundary issue. And the anger is just the expression of those lack of boundaries. So why is it? Why do we struggle with boundaries? Why do so many of us feel so lost when it comes to having healthy boundaries? There's a few big reasons, and you can let me know if there's more that you know of or that you're aware of that come up for you why you struggle with boundaries. But the first one is that there's been an attachment injury somewhere in your life where usually with one of your caregivers from a young age, you didn't feel safe. You didn't feel really cared for. You didn't feel like they were there for you. Or maybe you felt like you had to be something or be a certain way or, kind of deny yourself to be what they wanted so that they would love you. And so you learned that you weren't allowed to have boundaries. You weren't allowed to have a sense of self in those early relationships. And so you didn't really learn how to do it because you didn't think that you were allowed to, or maybe even from a developmental perspective, you didn't feel like it was safe to have that. So your way of staying safe and staying connected to a caregiver, at least attempting to stay connected, was to not have any boundaries. Another big reason is if there was trauma or abuse at some point. So trauma, abuse, clear boundary violations. Usually not clear when it's happening, especially if it's with a child that doesn't know that this is not okay. Children inherently trust adults, but unfortunately adults are just older people who haven't always, or at least even maybe rarely, have sorted out their own stuff. And so act out in ways and treat children in ways that are not okay, but the child doesn't know that because they inherently trust that the adult is right or knows what's best or is going to be there to look out for them and take care of them. So if they're being treated in this way, then it's the right thing on this kind of one level, but then on this kind of deeper level, they know, right? There's like this part of us that knows it's not okay. But if huge boundary violations have been done at some point, then chances are there's a lot of boundary confusion there. You don't really know what boundaries are and how to even have them because they've been violated in such an extreme way. The next, probably the most common one for those of us who have grown up not really knowing what boundaries are or where they are, or even that we're allowed to have them, is modeling. Just plain and simple. We had parents who didn't have boundaries. We had parents who often felt stressed or overwhelmed or bitter and resentful, did things for other people, but then kind of talked badly about that person behind their back, or took a bunch of things on and then often felt stressed or overwhelmed, were people pleasing or overfunctioning or getting overwhelmed a lot. And that's just what we learned, how we learned to interact with and cope with life. And so that's just what was modeled to us. That's what we took on. What can you do now? Something really simple you can start with, 25 ways to say no. These are all clear yet kind, confident ways to say no, especially if you struggle with saying no, that makes you really uncomfortable. Grab that. Another thing is, I have another video on here that's about why you can't keep your boundaries, and it really looks at what prevents us from setting and keeping our boundaries, and really looks at like the deeper stuff about what we think it's going to mean about us, how we're worried that other people are going to react to our boundaries. So you can watch that video. It's right here on YouTube. Again, just click the link below. It'll take you right to that video. That's going to help clear out a lot of reasons why you haven't been setting your boundaries and give you some clear and actionable steps to start setting clear, kind, confident boundaries that you feel good about and that other people will listen to and respect. So You can get that in that video. Again, 25 ways to say no, that video on why you can't keep your boundaries and how to start keeping them. Grab those or go and download the one, watch the other. Let me know what connected with you. It is always good to have you here. And until next time, take good care of yourself and take good care of those around you. See you soon.